In my past life, Jack and I always seemed to miss our chance with each other. After a lot of struggles, we finally got married. On our wedding night, he told me he was going overseas for an aid project. He left me and was gone for 10 years without a word. When he came back, he brought the woman he loved when he was younger. He said, "Stella, we never registered our marriage, so it wasn't legal. I'm getting married, and it's inappropriate for you to stay in my house." It was then I realized what I thought was a missed opportunity was actually intentional on his part. He lived happily with his family, thriving, moving into a new home with his new bride. And me? Though the city was in full bloom, I seemed to miss out on spring. In this new life, I decided to leave first and vanish on the wedding day. But at the wedding without a bride, he completely broke down. "Jack, your little fiancée is checking up on you again. Clingy, isn't she? Afraid you'll fly away like a phoenix? Yeah, might as well tie you down with a belt. Stop talking like that, look at her blushing." I suddenly looked up, gazing at the owner of the gentle voice. It was Amy. She had black hair and pale skin, and a graceful figure. Her smile was so sweet and pure, she was known as the goddess of the architecture department. In my past life, she was the one Jack loved and sought after all his life. At that moment, I suddenly realized I had been reborn. Reborn to the time before the wedding. Jack was back on leave to organize the wedding. And Amy was the sweetheart he returned with in my previous life. Right now, she was smiling lightly at me, looking for Jack. He'll be down soon. I stood in the sunlight, dazed. Jack came over with a cold look on his face. "What are you doing here again?" He pushed through the crowd to stand before me. He grabbed my arm and pulled me to a secluded path. "Do you have to cling when I'm just meeting up with classmates?" He adjusted his glasses, looking displeased. "Stella, there are only 5 days until the wedding. Can you give me these last 5 days of freedom?" The lush branches overhead cast a large shadow. Sunlight filtered through, shimmering like gold on his face. But his gaze was icy cold when he looked at me. I gazed at the man before me. A man I loved for 18 years in my past life. Now he was in his prime, clear and handsome. But who could have thought, beneath the surface, his heart was so harsh and cold? I looked away and lowered my eyes with a smile. "Sorry, Jack. I won't bother you anymore," I said and turned to leave. Jack grabbed my arm again. "What are you so mad about this time? I already agreed to marry you, what else do you want?" I turned quickly, shaking off his hand. Jack was taken aback, but soon his eyes were filled with more disdain. "Stella, if you keep this up, let's just cancel the wedding." I took a deep breath. Swallowing all the bitterness, grievance, hatred, and sadness. I would give back exactly how he treated me in the past life. So when I spoke again, my voice was softened. Looking at him, there was a trace of grievance in my eyes. "I'm not mad. I just wanted to ask your opinion on some things for the wedding." Jack cut me off with a wave of his hand before I could finish. "I don't have any opinion. I told you before, just do it the way you like." "Alright, then I won't ask you about the rest." Because I seemed so obedient, maybe some guilt lingered in his heart. Jack suddenly reached out, ruffling my hair. "Alright, I'll come back early tonight to have dinner with you." I pretended to be happy. "Okay, I'll be waiting for you." Jack couldn't help but smile. But just for a moment, he frowned and his smile disappeared. I pretended not to notice and left cheerfully. Not until I walked far away did I squat under a tree and let the tears flow. At dinner, Jack returned, but he wasn't alone. He brought Amy with him. In my last life, he kept his feelings hidden, so I had no idea he liked Amy. This time, even before marrying me, he couldn't resist making advances. Amy greeted everyone with a charming smile. She handed out beautifully wrapped gifts. Amy was pretty, elegant, and dignified. Standing beside tall, refined, and handsome Jack, they were a perfect match. And me? I seemed out of place like an outsider. Stella, this is for you. Wishing you and Jack a happy marriage. Amy walked over and handed me a gift. I took it openly and thanked her. She seemed a bit surprised by my reaction, pursed her lips, and her smile dimmed. Stella, go prepare the food, Auntie naturally instructed me, as she had done countless times before. I put down the gift and raised my bandage-covered fingers. I accidentally cut my hand this morning, so I can't cook tonight, I said calmly. Eric rolled his eyes. Geez, just because you cut your hand, you can't cook. Gina chimed in, I think you're just being lazy. Auntie glanced at me and sighed with a smile. Stella's going to be a bride soon. Brides are supposed to be delicate. Guess this old lady will have to cook. Amy quickly offered to help in the kitchen. Auntie, Stella hurt her hand, let me help you. How could I let you do that? You're a guest. It's no problem, Auntie, I'm just here to lend a hand. Soon, Amy was bringing out a dish. Stella, can you take this dish for me while I help Auntie peel some onions? She casually asked me to help. I stood up, ready to take the dish. But before my hand could touch it, the dish tipped over. Hot fish spilled all over Amy, especially on her bare leg, leaving it instantly red with burns. She cried out, crouching and clutching her leg, with tears welling up in her eyes. Stella, you did that on purpose, didn't you? Jack was livid, shoving me aside. I stumbled and fell to the floor. My palm landed on the sticky fish, getting pricked by sharp bones. My forehead hit the edge of the table hard. Jack carefully helped Amy up before coldly demanding, apologize to Amy. I endured the intense pain, shakily standing back up. Blood dripped from my palm onto my skirt, a shocking sight. Jack seemed a bit stunned, but then his gaze turned cold. Stella, apologize. Amy, it's fine, he tried to brush it off. Stella didn't mean to drop the plate. Amy pulled at his sleeve, softly urging him. Jack, really, it's okay. Stella, didn't you hear me? I said apologize to Amy. And if I don't want to? I challenged him. Then I'll cancel the wedding right now. Jack stood up, towering over me. Stella, you know my temper. I never take back my words. Amy stood behind him, slightly smiling as she caught my eye. I knew she was trying to provoke me. She didn't want the apology, she wanted the wedding called off. Amy wanted to marry Jack herself. She didn't want to marry someone she didn't love, taking the hard way around to finally get what she wanted. But I wouldn't give in to her. Fine, I'll apologize. I pressed my lips together, tears welling in my eyes, my face a mix of anger and fear. The moment I apologized, Jack visibly relaxed, even though he quickly put on a cold demeanor again. Don't let it happen again, he warned, taking the first aid kit Eric handed over. Giving me a frosty glance, he said, the wedding is in a few days, so behave yourself. I hung my head, silently letting tears fall, looking vulnerable and afraid. Carefully, Jack treated Amy's wound, suggesting gently, let's take you to the hospital to check it out, just to be safe. Will it be inconvenient? I don't want to upset Stella. It won't, Jack assured. It was Stella's fault, after all. She caused the trouble, I'm just cleaning up the mess. Why should she be upset? That night, Jack didn't come home. I got a few texts from an unknown number. They worried about my injury, not wanting me to be in pain, promising to keep me company tonight. Go to bed early, they suggested. Don't wait up for nothing, bride-to-be. She was right. I did need to sleep early. There was a lot I had to take care of, like the old houses and shops my parents left behind, and the inheritance. The properties needed to be passed to a reliable agency for sale. And all the inheritance, I'd settle and take with me. Not a cent would go to family. The day before the wedding, I needed to try on my wedding dress again for a final fitting. In my previous life, Jack barely tried on his suit and left. But this time, he didn't leave. He stayed until I finished trying on the main gown, sitting on the couch outside. When I came out, there was a clear look of awe in his eyes. "The waist seems a bit loose." "Tighten it up some more," the stylist suggested softly. Jack agreed, "Yeah, Stella's waist is thin. Tighten it a bit more." But I shook my head, "No need. This is more comfortable." Then I added, "Not like I'll actually wear it, anyway. Too big or too small, it doesn't matter. You used to cry all the time when you first came to our home." He walked over, wrapping his arms around my waist from behind. "In a blink, you've grown into a beautiful lady. Stella, we're getting married." He lowered his head with emotion in his eyes, leaning in for a kiss. But I raised my hand to stop him. "Someone's here." I acted shy, and Jack chuckled, clearly happy. "Then wait for the wedding night," he murmured in my ear. I lowered my head, a silent, mocking smile appearing on my lips. The night before, the couple shouldn't see each other. With no family of my own, I'd stay at the hotel. Jack walked me downstairs when my phone rang. It was probably Amy, and Jack seemed a bit distracted. I made a point of looking jealous and unhappy. "All right, tomorrow's the wedding," Jack raised an eyebrow. "Don't give me attitude over trivial things. You'll come pick me up early?" I looked up at him, eyes full of expectation and uncertainty. Jack was clearly pleased. "We'll be on time, don't worry." With that, he left in a bit of a hurry, and I turned and went upstairs immediately. I did a final check on my bank cards and passbooks and made a few calls to the agency before taking a bath and going to bed. I slept dreamlessly. Jack, however, had a restless night. As dawn approached, he dozed off for a bit, but strangely, he dreamed of Stella. It was the scene of her trying on the dress yesterday. Her every move was beautiful. In his negligence, Stella had quietly blossomed into a stunning young woman. Her waist was petite, her skin fair. Though not as tall as Amy, Stella's delicate charm was captivating. Unlike Amy's slenderness, Stella had a youthful roundness. The dream turned a bit indecent. For the first time, feelings stirred for the Stella he usually disregarded. Woken by a phone call, Jack was inexplicably irritable. He even considered postponing his plans. Maybe he should delay, wait until after the wedding night. At least she'd loved him all these years, it would be his small return. But the voice over the phone snapped him awake. "What did you say? The bride is missing?" He stood abruptly, hands shaking slightly with the phone's tight grip. "That's impossible. Did you check the wrong room?" "No," they confirmed, "we didn't go to the wrong room. The front desk said the room checked out 2 hours ago. And we can't reach her. The makeup artist is about to cry." Jack felt a piercing buzz in his ears, disorienting him. It took a while before he found his voice. "I'll call her. Please wait a moment." Yet Stella's phone was unreachable. Rifling through his contacts, unsure of who to call, he realized he had no contact info for any of Stella's friends or family. He knew nothing about her. For years, she had chased after him tirelessly. He had assumed she'd always be in his grip. So even now, he couldn't believe Stella would leave him. Hastily throwing on clothes, Jack drove to the hotel, anxiety prompting him to run 2 red lights. Nearing the hotel, he tried Stella's phone again, still no connection. His heart sank uncontrollably. But then, a call came from the makeup artist. "We found the bride, it was a misunderstanding." Jack felt his heart suddenly settle. It was like a heavy fog in his chest was quickly swept away by a giant hand. The car stopped abruptly by the side of the road. His voice was shaky. "Say that again." "The bride was found," someone repeated. "She said she didn't sleep well last night and switched rooms." Jack didn't catch what the makeup artist said next. Leaning back in his seat, he suddenly started laughing. He must really be losing it. Stella loved him so deeply, there was no way she'd run off. It was crazier that he almost believed she did for a second there. Utterly ridiculous. Before the wedding, his family had even consulted fortune tellers about their fate. Due to some superstition, the groom was not supposed to greet the bride himself. When the bridal procession returned to the venue, Jack had already changed into his expensive black suit, holding flowers, standing downstairs. However, the groomsmen's expressions were all over the place. And the bridesmaids, they were nowhere to be seen. The bride sat in the car, her face hidden under a white veil. Her side profile was faintly visible, a beautiful mystery. Jack originally thought he wouldn't be too excited. After all, marrying Stella always had a hint of reluctance about it. But for some reason, when he saw the bride in the car, his heart rippled with unknown feelings. Yet beneath it all, he felt a secret joy. He remembered the last time Stella tried on her wedding dress, how stunning she looked. When he thought of her eyes, soft and full of emotion, looking at him, a gentle warmth softly budded in his heart. Besides having a successful career, a woman's unwavering love over the years could also make a man feel incredibly proud and satisfied. Holding the bouquet, he slowly approached the car. His groomsmen were college friends. They looked like they wanted to say something but didn't. The car door opened, Jack reached out his hand, Stella. He wasn't aware that as he uttered her name, a faint smile appeared in his eyes. The fingers wrapped in white lace were soft and slender, gently landed in his palm. Jack immediately held it. But the moment he did, a strange feeling rose in him. This didn't seem like Stella's hand. Her fingers were softer, her hands fit perfectly in his. Right then, the bride turned to get out of the car. Through the white veil, she shyly gazed at Jack. But in that instant when their eyes met, Jack suddenly let go of the hand he was holding. It was like all the blood drained from his face in a second. Around him was a dreadful silence. Amy was first shocked, then disbelief washed over her. In the end, she was so embarrassed and hurt, her eyes turned red. Jack's bouquet dropped as he turned, grabbing someone randomly. "What's going on? Where's Stella? Didn't you go to the hotel to get her?" Without realizing it, his voice rose sharply. "You didn't realize you got the wrong person? What do you all think you're doing?" "We don't know either. When we went to pick her up, it was just Amy in the room." "Yeah, we never saw Stella." Jack turned back, eyes fixed on the makeup artist. "Didn't you say you found the bride? This is what you mean by found? It's not my fault." The makeup artist was almost crying. She was just a worker, what could she do? It was because Amy said she'd take full responsibility that she dared to lie for money. "Jack, it's my arrangement." Amy got out of the car, standing with her back straight. Her eyes were red, but her face was calm and composed. "Stella's missing, and the wedding's about to begin. I didn't want you embarrassed, so I came up with this idea. Blame me, accuse me, it's not related to anyone else." At this, she dropped her head slightly, tears she tried holding back fell as she let out a sorrowful smile. "It's because I like you too much, that's why I acted foolishly." "Jack, why don't you just go with it? Haven't you always had a soft spot for Amy? Besides, Amy and you share the same interests, she's better than your young bride." On such a big day, she threw a tantrum and just left. Is she expecting you to bring her back with fanfare? No telling what drama she'll cause in the future. Time's running out, Jack, make a decision. Everyone started speaking at once. Amy's sobbing gradually stopped, gazing at Jack with a hint of hope. Jack stood still for a long time. Then he slowly turned to face everyone. Amy looked lovely in the white wedding dress. He didn't deny he got along well with Amy. After spending so much time together, he did have feelings for her. But he was always clear that he was supposed to marry Stella. In his heart, he already considered her his wife. Even if he secretly felt that Stella was no longer his equal. He never thought of breaking the engagement. Instead, he let her elevate herself by marrying him. But Jack never expected. He didn't have the heart to dump Stella. He planned to marry her as agreed, even concealing his plan to go abroad for work. He had already decided to delay his departure, to give her a perfect wedding and wedding night. With luck, she'd have a child. Then she could secure her place in the family. He thought this way, he wouldn't betray her family's kindness or her years of love. But now, Stella decides to disappear the day before the wedding. Jack couldn't comprehend it. Where did she get the nerve to act like this with him? Was it because he got a little too close to Amy? Because that day at the house, he defended the injured Amy and blamed her? But where did Stella get the guts to act like this? Wasn't she scared this wedding could be entirely cancelled? Does she think she can play him by relying on her parents' kindness? Jack was never so furious and out of control before. He even thought about doing what his friends said, just going along with it. Marry Amy, just like that. But somehow, looking at the beautiful and graceful Amy in front of him, she was wearing Stella's chosen wedding dress. She was taller than Stella. And thinner too. So, the waist was looser, and the front was pretty empty. He couldn't help but think about how Stella looked yesterday, trying on the wedding dress. She stood in front of him, looking slender and graceful but also had those curves. He was truly blown away at that moment. Stella's everyday style was so casual and relaxed. He never knew she could clean up so well. "Jack," Amy said softly when she noticed him just standing there. But Jack suddenly lifted his hand and tore off the groom's boutonniere, tossing it to the ground. "Stella's not feeling well. Let's postpone the wedding," he said and walked away without looking at anyone, not even Amy. Amy stood there shocked, her face turning red. Everyone's eyes were on her, feeling sorry for her, or maybe just waiting to see her embarrassment. She trembled all over, her fingers cold and shaky. She'd never been so humiliated in her life. Even with a modest background, she worked her way into a top university. As the belle of the architecture department, guys always fawned over her. Jack was always at her side, eager to please. But now, he was the one making her feel ashamed in front of everyone. Why? Just why? Amy yanked off her veil. As tears fell, she slammed the veil to the ground. It wasn't until I boarded the plane that I could finally breathe easily. The plane soared high above the clouds. I leaned back in my seat and gently closed my eyes. The nightmares from my past life seemed to temporarily end at this moment. I didn't know what the future held, but one thing was clear: getting away from that ungrateful family meant my future was bound to get brighter. When I was 5, my parents died in an earthquake. In their last moments, they pushed Jack out to safety, saving his life. So, his family took me in, feeling indebted, and set up a marriage between us. But as I grew up, that gratitude turned sour. As Jack's future took off, I became the lucky girl who was riding on their coattails. When Jack left the country for work, he disappeared. I sold my parents' house to care for Jack's mom. She was paralyzed for 5 years, and I looked after her all that time. Later, I helped Jack's siblings with their weddings and families. As the big sister, I gave up my parents' inheritance willingly. I funded Gina's wedding with $36,000. I helped her during her divorce and took her back home. But in the end, when Jack wanted me gone, she coldly said they'd long repaid my family's kindness. When Jack returned with Amy, it was Gina and her mom who welcomed Amy and approved of their marriage, supporting Jack's decision to leave me. Actually, Jack had been sending money back over the years, and he'd been living with Amy all along. Everyone knew, except for me. I was in the dark, used until my very last bit. Looking back, it all seemed so ridiculous. If my parents could see all this, would they regret saving Jack? I'll never know the answer. I've lived 2 lives and realized being good doesn't mean you'll be rewarded. Jack tried calling countless times but never got through, and I blocked all numbers from his family. Jack's mom wasn't worried at first. "Jack, don't go after her. What bride tries to pull such a stunt? She's doing it to get you to give in, and we won't." Stella's just a lonely girl who idolizes my son. She won't really leave. She can't resist such a great marriage. Jack stood by the window, feeling uneasy. Stella wasn't just causing drama, she was truly upset and didn't want to marry him anymore. He recalled how she pushed him away when he tried to kiss her in the dress fitting and how she urged him to leave the hotel last night. She wasn't the same anymore, so sensitive and dependent. She cared about him so much that it became draining, which is why he applied to work abroad. He felt he'd repaid his debt and could pursue a life he wanted. But he didn't expect Stella to be the one to walk away at their wedding. "Mom, what about my gold jewelry?" Gina piped up. "You promised once Stella married in, she'd buy me a whole set. Now she's gone, and my jewelry is too." Jack felt a sharp pang. Stella had a fair inheritance from her parents, including properties and a large sum of cash. Sure, it seemed like they'd supported her all these years, but Jack knew they'd spent plenty of her money. Can't reach Stella these days. But as long as all her stuff is still here under her name, it means she hasn't really left for good. Maybe she's just trying to scare him a bit. "Why are you so anxious? Just wait until she comes back begging and asks your brother to marry her, then you can make her promise you anything, right?" Jack's mom said it kind of casually, but Gina still pouted. "Who knows when she'll return though? What if she never comes back?" "No way, you know how much she likes your brother." "True, if not for her genuine feelings for my brother, I wouldn't agree to this marriage." Jack suddenly turned and spoke up. "Mom, go ask around right now." "Ask about what?" "Check if those properties under Stella's name are still there or not." Jack's mom got anxious immediately. "Jack, what do you mean by that? If they're still there, then Stella is just throwing a tantrum at me this time." "But if they're gone," Jack suddenly gave a self-mocking smile but didn't finish. However, Jack's mom quickly figured it out. She couldn't sit still and rushed out. "I'll get someone to find out now. Her condos and those commercial properties, selling them isn't something that happens overnight." "What do you mean, did Stella really run away from the wedding?" Gina was instantly worried. She'd already bragged in front of all the cousins. If Stella really bailed, wouldn't all her jewelry be gone too? Where would she show her face? Yet Jack just let out a cold laugh, looking at her. "Why are you so worried now? Didn't you always dislike her and not want her as your sister-in-law? Who's gonna say no to money, right? Yeah, who would turn down money? That's why family looks down on Stella but also clings to the engagement. And me, deep down, am I not thinking the same? Stella has money but no support. Her family perished in the earthquake. And she's madly in love with me. Marry her, and her stuff naturally becomes family's. That's why I can safely apply to work abroad with no worries. Gina's despicable and selfish. Am I not such a jerk too? Could she be really gone?" With a blank expression, Jack walked out. "I don't know. If she really left, then what?" Gina stomped her foot repeatedly. "Mom wanted to swap the villa, the deposit's already paid." Jack scoffed. "Whoever wants to swap can pay for it themselves." Jack stormed out, slamming the door, leaving the piercing cries behind. "I went to a southern city I've always loved. When applying for college, I followed Jack to the north. But my dream school wasn't there. Now, with lots of free time and financial freedom, I can finally pursue my dreams. After settling down, I bought a 2-bedroom apartment near that university. Half a month of settling in and then I started getting ready for grad school exams. If I couldn't attend undergrad here, getting my master's here wouldn't be bad." Last lifetime, Jack became successful and had a booming career. When he returned, the family reunited, moved into a new home, and he remarried. He was riding high on life's successes. But as for me, they say the city's in full bloom, but when I came, it seemed like I missed spring. So this life, I'm going to complete that picture myself. In the second month of settling down, when Jack was supposed to be working overseas, he suddenly showed up. The spring was just right, and I had just stepped out of the school library. I saw him standing downstairs at once. He was thinner but still stood out in the busy crowd. If it weren't so, I wouldn't have poured all my youthful affection into him during those budding years. But now, even standing face to face with him, there wasn't a ripple in my calm heart. Hugging my book, I kept walking forward. Jack softly called my name, Stella. Got something to say? I looked at him with a mild expression, just as if I were looking at any passing stranger. I've been looking for you. Why? You're my fiancé, we're engaged, betrothed. Just engaged, but no marriage license. It's not legal. Stella. Jack's white shirt was still spotless. His look, with glasses on, used to be my favorite. Now he stood there, everything just as I once liked. But now it's meaningless. After you left, I thought about a lot. Between Amy and me, I admit I was wrong. I only admired her academic achievements, there was no romantic interest. I've broken things off with her, she went abroad half a month ago and won't ever come back. Stella, I promise nothing similar will happen again. Come back with me, the wedding planner never cancelled us, we can have it anytime. Why do you think I'll go back with you? Because I used to like you a lot. I looked at him and smiled. Jack, haven't you figured it out? From the moment I left, you became nothing to me. Stella, I know what happened before hurt you, I've reflected on it. Nothing ever happened between Amy and me, I swear. Does any of that matter? Jack, I could care less about you and Amy. Because I stopped liking you long ago. That's not true, we practically grew up together. Stella, you've liked me for so many years. Didn't stop you from applying to run off overseas for work, planning to leave on the wedding day, right? Jack's face changed suddenly. How do you know? I also know you were gonna take Amy with you. If nothing changed, you'd start a new family abroad. And me, left behind, none the wiser, taking care of your family out of obligation, bleeding my resources dry, till they tossed me aside. Isn't that right, Jack? His face turned pale, like he'd just seen a ghost. But I wasn't about to let him off the hook. I stepped forward slowly. If I'm not mistaken, your mom's seriously ill, isn't she? Jack took a quick step back. How do you know? I figured Jack's mom was just recently diagnosed with a serious illness. She's always been one to save face, keeping it hidden from friends and family, so the word hasn't gotten out. So, Jack, you came to find me. Do you genuinely know you're wrong and want to make it up to me, or is it just to have me come back and take care of your mom like a nanny, maybe even chip in with my inheritance to fill your family's endless pit? How can you think of us like that? Jack's face went pale. After all, she raised you for over 10 years. Even if there wasn't much merit, there was still effort, right, Stella? The money I've given your family over the years pays back that bit of upbringing. Jack, don't come looking for me again. We're done. I have nothing to do with you or your family anymore. With that, I brushed past him and walked toward the school gate. But Jack was relentless. He came after me once more. Stella, calm down. Think about it again. After all those years together, you really think you can just let it all go? Yes, I've let it all go a long time ago. Jack, you should let go too. Instead of clinging to me, find a way to make more money. Your family will have plenty of expenses in the future. Stella, are you really going to be this heartless? I couldn't help but find it funny, Jack, when your whole family conspired against me, did you ever feel a twinge of remorse? But Stella, we didn't actually harm you. It's all just your imagination. So what? Even if it was just speculation, can't I just nip the possibility in the bud? Stella, we go way back. Can you guarantee that if you marry someone else, they won't deceive you? I laughed outright. Do I only have the path of marriage? Jack lingered in the city for a week. Eventually, I called the police, and he left reluctantly. He seemed to realize I was determined not to come back. After that, he didn't bother me anymore. When I got into grad school, some classmates from back home reached out privately. They said Jack's reputation was down the drain, and he was struggling. More and more people started spilling the beans, saying his family was ungrateful and heartless, bullying the only daughter of their benefactor. Apparently, Jack's mom got what she deserved and was bedridden. Eric, who's been idling around, got into trouble and served a few months in jail. Gina didn't get into college and ended up dating a thug. She moved in with him so she wouldn't have to care for her mom. The whole family was now Jack's responsibility. Between the massive medical bills and the penalty for breaking the agreement on a villa Jack's mom had put a deposit on, Jack's personal savings were wiped clean. Life got really tough for him, and even his classmates and friends stopped talking to him. When I heard that, I just shrugged it off with a smirk. Without me to bankroll their expenses, life's gotten pretty hard for them. But what does that have to do with me? I have a house, a car, and plenty of savings to enjoy my carefree student life. Maybe I'll meet someone I like in the future, or maybe not. Living solo doesn't sound bad at all. Their filthy swamp can't disgust me anymore. Later, I heard Jack left his family and got with Amy. They even settled down in City B. Amy gave him a son, and their life seemed okay for a bit. But after a few years, Jack slinked back to town alone. By then, they'd sold everything they could, leaving only a rundown rental. Jack's mom didn't get the treatment and care she needed, and she passed away last year. Eric went to Myanmar to scam people, and nobody knows what became of him. Gina married early, had 3 kids, and gets domestically abused on the regular. Jack lives alone in that shabby apartment, drinking his life away. The son Amy had wasn't even his. She just used him as a stand-in dad, and when the kid was grown, she got back together with the kid's real dad and kicked Jack out. When I went home from my parents' memorial anniversary, I ran into him. Even though he was only in his early 30s, most of his hair had turned gray. Reeking of booze, he sat dazed on the street. Passers-by looked at him with disdain. No one would recognize him as the once glorious Jack. I wasn't overcome with pity for him. But I did feel a hint of wistfulness. When we were kids, Jack was really good to me. But then we grew up, and we both changed. As I walked past him, he seemed to recognize me and stood up excitedly but then turned away, covering his face. I just acted like I didn't see or recognize him, and I kept walking forward. Another spring has come around. The flowers are blooming again. I won't look back, and I won't forgive. I'll just keep walking on in my own version of spring. Forever and ever.